my name is Mackenzie Williams. This is my final individual video for the Electronic Artrium VIP in spring 2024. So my role this semester was on a subteam called VAD, or Visual Arts Design, as one of the co-leads, and specifically I worked on Section 4. My main tasks included building the flowering forest, adding the honeycomb to the scene, and making Mr. B able to fly there. I worked on the old version of the Mr. B number trails, created some of the cutscenes, and created the dual display functionality. So for the flowering forest, we actually had one from last semester that, due to a merge conflict in GitHub, would not merge into main. But that ended up being okay. We had some edits we wanted to make to it anyways, so I went ahead and kind of redid it. I used the same assets from that scene and imported them over into my copy and sort of varied the flower colors and their positions, varied the tree type and the leaf assets that we were using, and went ahead and added each of those to the scenes and altered the colors so that it just all looked a little better, a little more cohesive and natural. And then I also created a material for the background on the terrain because the grass that you can kind of see waving here in this upper picture doesn't render all the way back in the scene. So I had to create a texture for the terrain that looked like the grass, so there wasn't a super obvious cutoff and weird rendering within the scene. So for the honeycomb, I worked with Shinwin. She made a normal map object in Blender of the honeycomb and imported it into the scene. And then I placed it in the scene, added the second camera, gave Mr. B a positioning in front of that honeycomb, and made him, with another script, able to fly in between the start position and this honeycomb. And I also messed with the prefab a little bit, so it created some more contrast of color between the honeycomb and Mr. B himself. And then this sort of plays into the dual display functionality that I did, because the main scene with Mr. B acting as a narrator is supposed to be on a different monitor than the honeycomb, where later his family will be, and that will be shown during the win section or win event. So since they're supposed to be on different monitors, I had to figure out how to create these different displays that could each show different cameras, and that is what the script you see right here on the screen. Basically, just for each display activated or each display assigned to a camera, you activate a different display from Unity itself. I also worked on the old Mr. B number trails. Now these were overhauled because we kept running into issues and they weren't quite looking how we wanted them to. But in the beginning of the semester, I continued working on them, and I had started these last semester. So at the beginning of this semester, I worked on smoothing out Mr. B's turning and customizing the particle dissipation for each number. We did end up overhauling them, as you can see here, with the Bezier curves, and Shinwin did that. And in the long run, I think it was better for us because, again, the trigonometry-based script that I had been using kind of kept running into problems and slow processing, but it is one of the things I worked on at the beginning of the semester. I also worked on creating some cutscenes. So the three in particular that I made were the suppose you want to, I don't think, and that's how you cutscenes. And those are all part of the Section 4 cutscenes that are run pretty much by section control. Essentially what you do is create a timeline. You can see that here at the bottom, and you assign the facial expressions and the gestures and eye contact that you want Mr. B to have throughout a specific cutscene to this timeline, so you can see it as it plays and change how he looks as the lip sync and timeline plays. And then you also run that with the script here to the left. Pretty easy convention to follow, but you just give it each a name and tell it which animation file and which lip sync file to play. And then I actually have one of the cutscenes here if you want to take a look.
I don't think that's right, my friend. Try moving your pointing direction a little closer to the number 7.
So yeah, that's just one of the things I worked on this semester. In terms of a little more task information, the most time consuming was probably creating the flower forest, just because I had to go back and find all of our assets again. I had to confirm with Dr. Whitenauer that it looked how she wanted it to look. I was very particular in how I placed each tree, each flower, how it looked in the overall scene. And then, like I said, I had to create that new texture and learn how to paint and edit terrains. So there was some learning as well as just some perfectionism on my side that led it to be one of the more time consuming tasks. The most challenging was probably learning to create cutscenes, because to do this, I actually followed a guide made by Shinwen. She's the one who created the process of making these cutscenes, and so I had to follow this guide and give feedback to her on what I didn't understand through it as I went through it. So I had to pay attention to naming conventions that we already had set up in the scene. I had to find the files that were already imported. It was just a bit of a slower process. As I went through each step, and then of course trying to piece it together, anything that I didn't understand and providing feedback. So that made it a little bit more challenging. I think I'm most proud of the cutscene final products. They just feel like a very tangible result to me. I can show someone this little video and say, "Look what I made." And also I like the creativity that was involved in it of giving Mr. B just the right facial expressions and just the right hand gestures to really make it look like a convincing, like a storytelling moment. I most enjoyed creating the flowering forest. Again, I was very perfectionist about this. I wanted every flower to be in its right spot, color variation to be good, size of trees varied, leaf type varied, all these very specific things. But I think in the end, I'm really happy with how it turned out, and I liked doing it. I felt like it very much merged together creativity and game development and coding, and those are all things that I love. So I really enjoyed working on it. I think I least enjoyed working on the Mr. B number trails. Like I said, they ran into a lot of issues with processing time, and it felt like every time a problem was solved, like the smooth turning, a new one arose, like if Mr. B's looking at the camera or not. And so it just, with the amount of debugging that went into it and the long scripts, it wasn't super fun to work on at this point. But I'm glad we overhauled it. I think we ended up with a lot better of a product for us, and it just works a lot better in the scene. So, conclusions. I think new students should know that experimentation is really important in this project, and it's okay to change directions. So, most of us come in here not knowing how to make a game in Unity. And that's okay. I mean, again, experimentation. I tried my number hints with trigonometry, with my script, with smooth turning functions, and it just didn't really work out. We ended up having to change it. But I learned a lot in that first process of making imperfect numbers, and then I learned even more when we did make the perfect numbers. So it's really a chance to learn, and experimentation and documenting your process is really important for this VIP. My expectations for next semester, specifically for section 4, are to create the win and lose events. I think the lose event is mostly done. It's pretty much just going to be running that cutscene, but we do still have to be able to reset the scene, make sure we send Mr. B back and reset all the number hints and all that. I don't think we've done that yet. And then in terms of creating the win event, we still have some edits to make to that honeycomb travel script to make it happen a little bit faster and turn off and on just a little bit more smoothly. And then we also still have to add Mr. B's family and his little celebration shimmy at the end of the scene, so we still got that to go. And then we also have to polish integration. This is more on the section control side, but I imagine that next semester we'll start doing a lot more playthrough testing, a lot more ensuring that the pointing is going to VAD, is going to EM, not just that it's going there, but that it's going there correctly and that it's doing it consistently every single time. And so I think that's going to be a big part of next semester. That is all I have to talk about. Yeah, these slides were from Slides Go, but yeah, that's all I have to talk about for this semester. It's been super fun. So yeah, thank you.